first of all, good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you. I cannot believe I'm doing one of those digital meeting, but I'm doing it and it's happening. It's been in the works for a whole year. So let me tell you first that I didn't choose to be an artist. I think art chose me, and that's how it happened. Was 20 years ago, I was a translator, and my sister, who's an artist in Montreal, called me up in August. I remember very vividly. She said, come up and take my class on Wednesday nights. And I said, I can absolutely not do that. I mean, you're the artist, and plus you're teaching a live model drawing class. I can't do that. She called again and she insisted, and I went. And you know, you hear about these moments that are life-changing. Well, that was one of those. I went to the class, and for 3 hours, I didn't breathe. It seems like I was in a timeless zone. I walked out of there. Was dressed in black. I was translating during the day. I walked out completely covered with oil paint, and I didn't care. I was just. This is a feeling of I didn't know what happened. It was breathtaking. And I went back home, and for 3 years, I took that class back and forth from my office as a translator. On Wednesdays, I would drive to Montreal, take that class. And I was just after that feeling. I didn't understand, because there was one artist in the family. That was my sister. And 8 kids in my family. And my father always looked at my sister as the artist. So she is an unbelievable woman. I owe her the rest of this life that I'm enjoying so much. I took that class for 3 years, as I said. And after that time, it became that I was painting in my apartment a day here and there. Then it became a week, and it became 2 weeks. And then I started to say no to the country, the people I was translating for. And after a while, it was a month. And in 2005, my father passed. And that night, I remember when he left us, I asked him, I said, if you seem to be so connected up there, because he always said to us that he would be talking to angels and all of them up there. And I said, if I'm supposed to do anything with this art, please give me a clear sign, please. So a few days later, believe it or not, I had done little portraits, 5 by 6, and I had brought them to the framer in Montreal. And a gallery director went there 2 days after my father passed, and there's a ring on my door. The bell rings, and he's a director, and he comes up and he introduces himself. And he says, I'd like to work with you. And this language of galleries, and what do you mean work with me? Well, I would like to represent your work. I was flabbergasted. I thought, okay, Dad, I guess it's a clear sign. It started in 2006 with this first gallery. And after that, well, now I have 9 galleries representing my work around the world. And I'm very busy, and I have this wonderful gallery in Wisconsin. So happy to be represented by you, Alan, and all of you work there. So this is how it started. I left translation, big leap of faith, 20 years ago. And believe it or not, 20 years later, I still feel that I still have that feeling of not knowing where 3 hours, 4 hours have gone by in my studio. And this is why I paint. This is why I continue. And I guess when that feeling goes, I will hang up my brushes. I will just leave that incredible world I'm in right now. I go there every day with the same passion. And perhaps it's because I don't have an official training. I'm a self-taught artist. And I discovered everything as I was going. And every day I leave myself so much room to move. I don't have preconceived ideas when I paint. I don't take photographs. I am a terrible photographer. I tried that, doesn't work. So basically, when I go to my studio, I ask myself, what color would you like to work with today? And you should see my table of all the tubes and everything pressed out. If you ask me what are the primary colors, secondary colors, I'm a very intuitive gestural painter. So when I ask myself what color do I want to use, it's the start of the day, and it's a white canvas. And I've been talking to so many artists over the last 20 years, and always a question to me is, do you have this white, the blank, this panic in front of a canvas? No, because I let the paint talk to me, just like art shows me. I paint and it changes. Matisse said, the French painter, you just need one idea. You start and then the rest comes as you work. And it's true. This is how I work. And in the end of the day, I leave the studio. I used, believe it or not, to cut out the canvases because I was not happy with how it went. So I decided to call these canvases Not Happy With the crying babies. So at the end of the day, when I feel they're crying, because this is a real sense of unhappiness. So the crying babies, they might be 3 or 4 or 5 because I work on many at the time. I literally pick them up, turn them around against the wall, and I say, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. And if you're good, if you don't cry, I'll pick you up again. And I come back up the next day, and I tell you, I can hear them. They're not happy. So I leave them there, and eventually I'm able to turn these works that I've started, and I go back to them, and it eventually doesn't always turn out, but most of the time, yes. I can tell you that I always work on linen. Why linen? Because I work like the old masters used to work with rabbit skin glue. Linen with the rabbit skin glue on becomes a very hard surface, almost like a drum. And because I'm gestural painter, because I literally a bit of attack the canvas, I don't paint with brushes, I paint with palette knives. So that surface is fantastic. I love it. And I always paint it on linen, and I'm essentially an oil painter, but I've tried all kinds of things, watercolors, printmaking, but oil is really my medium. So I work on linen always, and my favorite type of canvas is the biggest. The biggest it is, the happier I am, because again, the arms go, and I feel free. But the challenge for me is to go from big to small and keep in the small work, to keep the intimacy or the same, I wouldn't say power, but the same, what would be the word, feeling. There's something that the small canvas speaks as loud as the big ones. I would like to tell you so much. I don't know. What did I write here? Oh, yes. Because I was a translator before, I know words mean a lot to me. So my titles, if you have looked at the titles of my paintings, they all come from poetry. I have anthologies from the 17th to the 20th century, books on poetry. So when I'm done the paintings, I will lay them all out in front of me. I'll put all the books on the floor, open the books, pick the books, and turn pages and look at the work. And I choose titles this way. So the titles of my paintings come from T.S. Eliot, from Emily Dickinson, from Blake, from Keats. It comes from them, those wonderful, incredible writers. And I don't choose the titles because they mean something. There's no relationship really between the titles and the work, but to me there is one. But I leave the people, the viewers, you to decide what the painting means, because first of all, I write behind the canvas. So if you look at the work, you won't know what the title is. You're gonna have to ask Alan. I lost my track. Yes, the titles come from poetry, and I kind of blank here all of a sudden. Oh yes, I could tell you that twice, not because of COVID, I can't do it anymore. And last year I couldn't, but every 2 years I go away. I'm a studio painter. I never paint outdoors. It's always indoors. So every 2 years I go abroad, always by the water, because you will see that in all my work, there is water, whether water is real water or a wet pavement or a pond that is iced over, and there's always skies. And in between comes my subjects that have come through over the years. First the boats, then the people, then the architecture. I do also flowers and monkeys. I love to paint monkeys. They haven't been introduced with the architecture because I don't know how yet. It might come, I don't know. Again, I go away, I bring not my oil because it's too cumbersome. So I go away and I challenge myself with watercolors. And I think it's the hardest of all mediums. But again, self-taught, I cheat. I invented my own watercolor ways. It's a bit of tempera with an egg, but also mixed. It's not very orthodox, but it works. And so I do little studies that I bring back to the studio, and I work with that. Because I'm not a photographer, I don't take pictures when I travel. I look, I observe. I'm a meditative person. When I travel, I take it all in, and very often it comes out years later. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I went to India and I was on an elephant, and it's not the height of the elephant that was so striking for me. It was the little people below on the ground. Everything was so small. So I came back home and that thing was behind my mind. And a few years ago, I was painting, and this is how, if you see, I think, Alan, you have one of those paintings with the little person, little people below huge architectures. So that came up. These memories come up. I don't sit with the purpose to find anything in particular. I paint and it comes, and I let my heart speak, the emotion of the moment. I don't compose anything necessarily before I start, because when I do, inevitably it goes the wrong way. I often paintings have two paintings under the final one because I didn't like it, and I paint over, and they give so much to work with and from. It's surprising what can happen when you wreck a painting. At first, it's expensive, and it comes from Belgium, and they don't always have it. So now I'm wiser with. Over the last 20 years, I've wisened up with what I do with my the crisis in the studio, if you want. So yeah, that's what I have to say. If you have any questions, I would be very, very happy to answer them. There might be some more thoughts coming to me, but feel free to ask questions. What else could I say? Let me see.
We'll go take some questions for you for now.
So, Franz, it seems your paintings have a perspective from behind looking forward, either groups of women, at least in this series, either in contrast looking towards urban environment or to the sea. And you said you're not a plein air painter. So how does this theme, what type of, the motion to me is very clear. It's very serene, contemplative. But where's this coming from with the groups of women? And they look like it's more late 19th century. Again, from behind looking forward to the urban environment or to the sea scene. Could you expand on that?
Yes, it's a good question. Very good question. Well, it's a very strange thing. I try to paint the figure with modern clothes, like what we're wearing tonight. You should have seen that. It was not working. It was just the only thing I managed to do is to put pants on men. that it works because it's a sort of jacket and the pants. But women, the only thing that come out always are these women from Victorian time, 18th, 19th century. And the only movies I love are period movies. I'm attracted to that. I have this aesthetic. I don't know where it comes from, but it's this very natural thing. That's the first time I painted the figure, those dresses came, and well, not necessarily those dresses, but referring to a period in time. And yet, sometimes these women are by the water, sometimes they're right in a very modern city. So I think my work is timeless, and at the same time, it's very contemporary. And I leave the viewer, you, to interpret where they are, where they're going, who are those people. It's not a particular place. They're not particular people. They're not doing anything particular. They might, but this is what I love about the questions I get during openings. People say, what are they doing? And I turn back the question to you. What do you think they're doing? And then they have all kinds of stories, and I love it. I just love it. And it's probably why I don't paint the figures looking at you, so that there's a bit more of the pensive, and then the viewer can really maybe sometimes put themselves in that person's body. It's happened to me that at one opening, a woman had lost her husband, and a painting like these women looking away at the sea, it comforted her. Somehow she felt like it was saying, adieu to her husband. So also you were asking about the sea, these women group. Well, there's no place in the world I love more to be than the ocean. I'm afraid of the water. I almost drowned twice when I was younger. At a pool party, or if you go to a beach, if there's one person on the beach or by the pool, it's going to be me. You won't see me in the water. So the water is in every painting I paint, and I don't know when it's going to go. It will always stay there until the day it leaves me, and I don't force that. It's a work in progress all the time. So these women, sometimes they by the water. They could be in Europe. They could be in any seaport. They can be on a beach today, but they could also be immigrants from the old continent 100 centuries ago. So again, it's very open, the timeless thing. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone? Another question? Sure, Karen.
I just had a question about the base, and some of the bases are orange and dark, and is that, you said some of them are layered on top of paintings you don't necessarily like. Some of them are obviously strategic. How do you start painting?
Okay, yes, good question again. How do I start a painting? Because at first, still today, paint is very expensive. So I would I put little layers. I start with a color. As I said, I start the day with a color. And it's very vague. It will not stay there, but it's just a very thin layer. And I work with the palette knife, so I will scrape it and I will paint over and over. And there's a lot of transparency, a lot of thin layers of paint over in a painting I make. So you will not have, let's say, red and that's it. So that's what you see when you look at basically all my paintings, all these different colors that I've chosen, that I've changed my mind because I don't know what mixes well together. I just really, you should see that it's all pressed tubes. Not the same gesture is with the same color, because I pick different colors and it go right on the canvas. And then when I come back, I don't even know what I put on that. I just go back. And so it makes the paintings vibrate probably more than if I were very conscious of using one color and I stay with that. And so it's not the way I work. That's why you see a lot of different colors mixed together. And in the end, they work, for me anyway.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have one color, but I don't want to dominate.
Sure, and then I'll ask what if there's
Oh,
no.
no, yeah, I did, yeah. So, and this is coming as a former public health official. Has COVID influenced your perception of the world and the art you'll produce moving forward? You alluded to, I mean, I understand the series is fairly contemporary, but I'm curious, again, given the timelessness that you referenced for your pieces, I'm wondering how that fits into a pandemic that we just hopefully are ending once in 100 years. How that might influence how you perceive your subject matter and the environment in which they live moving forward.
Good question. Well, first of all, the pandemic hasn't changed anything in the way I live because I work alone. I spend days alone. The solitude of the pandemic is very known to me. It's something that I spend my days alone in the studio. Now the subject, they haven't changed either in my paintings, and I think the viewer can see. I was told that first of all, the colors, they may be peaceful, they're not too aggressive. So the people that bought the paintings this last year said that they were calming, they were soothing, they were men and women, that they could look at the paintings and travel through them. For example, with these women together, standing very in silence, because you can almost hear it. It reflects also what we have been going through. We are very alone, we've been very isolated. So there's a connection, perhaps more now, between what I do and the subjects, the way they're represented in my paintings, and how people have gone through this hard last year and how they feel. They identify, maybe resonates maybe a little bit more with them. I don't think it will change I don't think I will paint any differently. Again, I don't know, maybe in a year. I process almost years later what I live. So this year I've painted the same way, same subjects, same scenes, but perhaps in 2 years, this is when I'm going to have a big COVID, a big COVID reaction. I'm expecting it almost, because this is how I am. It comes out years later. Everything's sort of delayed. time, how do you say? Warp zone. I live, I don't know. Maybe but again, I don't know what I would paint any differently, because already my paintings, the subjects are more alone. Sometimes they're in groups, but they're not talking. I don't feel like the people I paint are talking. They're reflecting, they're meditating, they're with themselves. They go inside. They're together. There's a lot of support. They're supporting, like these women. I always this painting with the group of women I revisit often. It represents a lot who I am also, because I come from a family of 8 children, 7 women and 1 man, and he's my twin, and he felt very alone growing up, and he's still today. 7 women. So these 3 women together, it I recognize myself in that painting. So it often comes back on the easel. So again, I hope it answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you.
So people have asked me many a time, so where are these cityscapes painted? Are they Quebec? Are they a fictional city in your mind? And I say, well, I'm not sure. So is there a way to describe the cityscapes? Are they
The cityscape.
Your cityscapes, I'm sorry. Are those
Yes.
cityscapes something from Quebec? Are they a fictional imagination in your mind? It'll be help me sell the art, because they always ask me. I make up stories that I'd rather have the truth.
No, they're not from here.
Okay.
The only,
They're from here.
because Canada is a young country, so the only city we have that would have sort of older buildings and not even 200 years old would be in Quebec City.
Right.
So, and I've traveled in Europe quite often. But again, I don't take pictures. So you'll have domes of cathedrals that could have been taken in Rome, and sometimes it's Budapest, sometimes it's Paris. It's a mishmash. Because I say always when I paint, break the line. So when it becomes too figurative, the result is not good with me. I am an abstract figurative painter. So you'll know it's a building, but don't try and look out the window. You won't fall off. Nothing is totally straight. So I invent. I invent everything. I create these scenes. As I said, it's not a particular place. They're never a particular city. It's a mix of different cities together from the trips I have made, or just in the spirit of a moment, I'm thinking of Venice. So many people have asked me, have you been to Venice? Never. I've never been in a gondola. I don't, but I love Venice. And that was the start of my architectural work, Venice. Perhaps because I had just adored Turner and his little watercolors of that city. But the architecture is definitely, it's not from here. And it's very, very invented. It's all created as I go. It changes all the time.
So now I have to change my sales technique. That's good. I understand the truth. Other questions? So your husband is an artist, yes?
Yes.
So do you guys paint together, or is that a disaster if that happens?
No, actually, I'm glad I'm going to talk about him, because I met him when I was not a painter at all.
Okay.
I was at a gallery in Montreal and I saw his work and I thought, oh my God, I love that work. And I met him later at an opening, and there was a dinner and he was sitting beside me, and we started to talk and we started to date, and we married in 2007. And he was in this, I live in an old Victorian home built in 1902, and my studio now is in the attic, but it was his studio when we married. And I was working at the time. I had started to paint in a tiny beanie 10 by 15 square feet little room of the kitchen. And well, I was okay with that because I didn't know any better, because he had the big studio and he'd been a painter way before me. He has 15 years ahead of me as in painting. So eventually he became very unhappy with the attic, and he said, would you like to have it as a studio? I said, oh my goodness, yes. So it changed my work, because now I could do 20 feet long painting, 10 feet long painting. I couldn't do in a 10 by 15 feet room, you can imagine. And so he bought a studio away from the 10 minutes away from the house, and we admire each other's work so much. In fact, what is interesting, Alan, is that collectors who don't know we're married will buy his work and my work, and they'll hang it in the same house. And yeah, and then it's because we both we love the old masters. We oil painters, and we really are oil painters. We have nothing else come in the painting but oil. So the aesthetic is similar in the sense it's I don't know why, but they work. The works together. And my big dream, and he's not here to hear that, but I'll tell him later, I would love to do a painting together, a big one. And I would love that. And I'm just waiting for, I don't know, something being done in the studio. I have no room to work. And I say, can I come? Let's do this. Eventually one day.
I think we're great. Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for coming, and most importantly, thank you for being here. This is wonderful. It warmed my heart. I know
thank you.
All our hearts. In this time of COVID where things are troublesome, it's really special to have someone as beautiful and lovely as you talk about your work. That spirit is just great. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.